In our series, A String of Pearls, DutchbuzZ contributors speak to people who have made an exceptional contribution to our local community. People whose passion for what they do have had an added value for the city of The Hague.
Antoni Heinsbroek recently retired after 40 years of teaching children with special needs and has since amped up his busy volunteering schedule, now mainly focused on helping refugee families feel more welcome in The Hague. What is his motivation for focusing on this community?
Well, it is that I realize very much that here in this part of the world we are privileged. I feel privileged to be born here, rich, a prosperous country. And I realize very much that it is nothing that I deserve one way or the other, but that it is just a matter of sheer luck. And this motivates me to share with what I have with people who are less fortunate, like refugees who are around us.
How easy was it for you to set up the kind of initiatives that you've been running?
When I was about to start my retirement, when I was still at school, I thought already in terms of getting involved with refugee support. Soon after, I learned that in the parish to which I belong, there was an existing refugee project. And believe it or not, but just after a year, I was asked to participate, and they needed an overall coordinator of the project. So I was very pleased that I could step in. Our project is called Hand in Hand, and it's one of the projects we have in the KOS, the Church of Our Saviour here in The Hague. It's about welcoming refugees, helping them to integrate, making them feel at home.
In the past, you've organized cultural trips. For example, you took a group of refugees by bus, along with some local people, to visit the Veluwe National Park. It included a visit to the Krole Müller Museum. How was this received, this trip?
People enjoyed it very much because it's really organized for them. So they just had an opportunity to see more of the country, but also to get to know more of us people, because we tried very hard to get as many volunteers on the trip as refugees, and we tried to organize it in such a way that they could easily get in contact with one another. That is one of the main aims we have, getting people together.
So not just getting them to practice speaking Dutch together, but really creating a sort of mixing of the different communities.
Now that you mention the speaking Dutch, that is important though, and that is a setback in the parish because it's an international parish. And for the refugees in this country, the top priority is to learn Dutch, because that enables them to feel at home, to share their feelings and to get in contact with people. As far as I'm concerned, there's an emphasis on the language, because that helps people to not feel isolated anymore.
How many of the volunteers who join the trips, how many of them stay in touch?
Most of them, but then we also see that some people are not so frequent anymore, which is not a bad sign at all, which not necessarily at least, because it very often means they have found a job and they are really busy with settling and moving house, and if they feel happy here and things work out, then they get more busy and they don't need our help as much as in the beginning.
Aside from the cultural trips, I know you've also been organizing some very convivial themed evenings, which have involved music and food, often from the theme is a different country.
You're thinking of what we call soul kitchens. Soul kitchens are really dinners, and again we have the formula that if we invite 40 people, that we try to get together a number of 40 volunteers, people who already live here and are sort of settled also, so that they can mix and get into contact, in touch with each other. These soul kitchens, that's funny. In the beginning we thought we have refugees from Afghanistan, from Eritrea, from Syria and so on. So let's see if there are some people among them willing to cook for the group. But after a while we realized that in our parish we have Italian community, we have an East African community, we have so many communities. Therefore, also many kitchens. So once we had a French soul kitchen, we had an Italian. So it's not only their kitchen, it's also our kitchen. And every time it's fun because music and food helps to feel together.
You've also shared Dutch traditions with them, with these families, such as Sinterklaas.
Yeah, that's always been very successful. Like last year, this year too, we have people asking. We have friends with a couple of young kids. Can they also come? So there is much interest for it. We come together in one big room and ask Sinterklaas to be there. And then there would be a meal and we would sing Sinterklaas liedjes. They will go home with the present and they will, I'm no doubt, feel very happy.
Are there any other initiatives?
Sure. 2 years ago, exactly 2 years ago, we started a praatcafé at Lola's in the Noordeinde. We invited people. We tried to find as many volunteers as refugees. And by inviting them, we hope to create an opportunity to get in contact. The whole idea was to help them practice their Dutch. That was fairly successful. But now with Corona we have had to change the formula. We don't come together anymore since March. We don't come together as a group, but we have tried to contact the people, the refugees that came, and we keep contact with them by means of WhatsApp video. Personally, I have every week 3 or 4 contacts with people like that, and we just talk, and they have an opportunity to practice their language.
Do you think refugees and refugee families in The Hague are particularly vulnerable for loneliness at the time of a pandemic like now?
Yes, they are. You said families. Well, even more than families, I'm thinking of people who live on their own, who are single. We try to do something about it by means of WhatsApp video, but that is nothing compared to real life contact.
From doing all this work, having all this contact with refugees, do you feel you have gained something personally for yourself? You've got something back from it?
No doubt about that. You see, now I'm retired and I have no real function anymore in society, and it gives me much pleasure to feel that I can do something meaningful. That may sound nice, but in fact it makes me happy. If tomorrow they would tell me, for some reason, you are not allowed anymore to meet these people, well, I would be very sad, because we have built up nice relations, friendships, but also because I'm deprived of the fun and the happiness I gain and I get. Definitely not just giving, it also I receive a lot.
And also you learn about their countries. I know you're very interested in other countries. You lived in Uganda for a while. I'm sure you've learned a lot about Syria in these last few years.
Not too much though, because sometimes, or I feel that often actually, it is not so easily to talk about the country because it is an open wound, it is trauma. Well, I ask people sometimes, what was yours? What did you learn at school, and how far was your school? And like yesterday, we were talking about school uniforms and so on. That is really before the war, but their country, it's not something they like to talk about much.
There is a growing support in The Hague for political parties that do not welcome immigrants, especially those of a different religion or different skin color. How do you explain this trend?
That indeed is a hard question. I have no simple answer to it. You see, there is in society, there is a group of people, and that is not just in Holland, but that is also in France and in the US, and I think in many countries these days. They feel sort of threatened by newcomers, people from abroad coming to share their life with us, and they feel afraid because they may take our jobs or our houses or our women or whatever it is. It's not right at all, and it has been always like that people move from one country to another. Perhaps in our day and age more than ever before, but it has always been the case. When I say in our day it is even more so, I mean that the inequalities in the world are getting so big, the differences of income, that we cannot blame people who have no future, have no possibilities in their own country, just for that reason to come and live with us, to try their luck and find a future. Because that has always been the way. But these days we have a few extremely rich people, and we have lots and lots and lots of people who have barely a human life. The inequalities are too big. That worries me, and they're getting bigger every year. My hairdresser, he was a man like that, and after a while I was so fed up with him that I have in the meantime chosen another barber. But talking with him, it made me think as well about this question, and it is of course very complicated, and many of the things that he put forward make sense to some extent. But in situations like this, I think the most important to let your heart speak, to imagine how you would, what choices you would make in their shoes. People basically are all the same. That's what I want to say. We are all one.
Family man Antony Heinsbroek tells us which Indian-inspired philosophy book shaped his outlook 40 years ago, and how he loves to spend his time today. Hint, it involves languages. But first, he told me about the very successful charity founded by his daughters, whose aim is the social inclusion of families with an immigrant background.
Our daughters Anne and Marieke, they started the Voorleesexpress. 14 years already. They realize that there are many families where mom and dads don't speak Dutch, and they speak their mother tongue, rightly so. But that creates a situation in which children, when they go to school, they start with a setback, or they are behind. Anne and Marieke realized this, and they said to themselves, it would be perhaps a simple help if we can visit these families and start reading loud children books, the way we were when they were young. And fortunately they had good memories of that, so they were well motivated to introduce that idea, and so to say it was well received. They noticed that many families were there who enjoyed it and who appreciated it. It comes down to a period of 20 weeks, during which once a week a volunteer, once a week they come and visit the family with with a couple of books, and they have fun with the young children, sitting next to them and cozy, reading the books, having fun with it, all Dutch. And in this period they also train the parents to do the same, so that this becomes a habit in the family and that it can continue after the 20 weeks are over.
Antony, you've brought a book to tell us about, one that's inspired you.
Yes, I did. It's a book that I read in the 70s. It's a book by Hans Voortman called Oosterse Renaissance, so Eastern Renaissance. And it was in the days of much knowledge and wisdom coming from India to Europe, and it became a sort of attraction. You remember the time of the Beatles, they went into that stuff as well. And this was a book that for the first time in my life I felt I'm no longer reading, I'm just experiencing all that he is saying. And it was just a very tiny book, but what was in it meant a lot to me.
And you've also brought a photograph.
Yes, I have a photograph. It's also a photograph that means a lot to me because we're all in it. On it you find my wife and our 3 children and at that time the 4 grandchildren.